Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on Wednesday unveiled his first cabinet of ministers nearly 10 weeks after his inauguration on May the 29th. The new cabinet was headlined by Wale Edun, an investment banker, a public finance expert, a Wall Street professional, and a former World Bank IFC staffer. Now let's drill down into the politics, the portfolios, and the expected performance metrics of the new cabinet. My guest is Bongo, a professor of economics at the Lagos Business School. Thanks for coming through for this very important conversation tonight, Professor.
Thank you very much, person.
It's good to have you. We appreciate it. Now, let me raise the curtain on this conversation by asking you, what do you make of the new cabinet portfolio announcement on Wednesday?
We've been here before. I remember on the day of the inauguration where I was a guest to your TV station covering the inauguration. I actually said that, the test of the administration will be on the kind of, or the profile of candidates that it will bring to work with him, the president. So now that it is out of the bag, and then we've seen the people. So what I can say is that it's a mixed bag. Yeah, we have some, renowned professionals, technocrats there. But we also have, politicians as well. But I think the cabinet is more of politicians than we have of technocrats. And, if you listen around, you will see or hear from the people that it doesn't really send a very strong signal to a government that is committed to reforms and, given the urgency of the economic situation that Nigeria is currently in.
Professor Adi, let's start with the politics first. Then we'll talk about the portfolios. Then we'll get to the performance metrics and all of that. So let's start with the politics. What are the politics of a cabinet formation for a new government in Nigeria within the context of the country that you said was seen before? What are the political choices and the economic choices, if any, when it comes to putting a cabinet together for a new government?
It's a very tough one for the president. I think when it comes to the subnational level, for governors, it's easier, because the governor seems to have almost absolute control of all the processes. So the governor of a state seems to be at liberty to pick who he thinks he can work with. And based on his own standards and criteria, he might elect anybody he thinks that fits into that mode. And of course, given what his aspiration is, about governance. But when it comes to the center, the federal, I think it's more problematic in the sense that the president doesn't have that liberty that the state governor has. Who makes it to the cabinet has to reflect this national principle of federal character. So the quota system, the states have to present someone. And so it's just not the president that decides who makes it to his cabinet. So the governors play a crucial role, because whoever comes from any state has to be someone approved by the governor. And then, of course, governors will elect people who would, of course, pander to their own interests, people who think like them, people who they are comfortable with. So, so eventually you end up with this kind of a mixed bag of sometimes strange bedfellows. Because they may not be all the president's men. Most of them don't come from the president. They come from recommendations from the governor, from the governors. So it's kind of a difficult choice for the president. So when you have that, and again, so there are so many political calculations going around in appointment of the key members of the cabinet. Because, you see, even though we have a 4 years, cycle when it comes to political tenure, but it seems to have settled that it's almost an 8 year. So each time from the first year, once the election has been won or anybody has been declared the winner, he begins to think in 8-year terms. So what informs the selection of members of cabinet even for the first run, it seems to be what will likely happen in the next, the next cycle of election. That's 4 years down the line. So that determines who they bring in. So they are looking at who is willing, who has the capacity to mop up vote for them at the end of the first tenure, when they will be seeking re-election in the second tenure. So you now, given this political expediency, so there is a kind of a trade-off. The president has some economic target, so he has something he wants to achieve. But then, given this political expediency, so it appears that he has to trade that off. To satisfy first his re-election and then his political constituency. So at the end of it, so it's a trade-off. You will have, some people who have the character, the profile that you will need to deliver the governance that you want. But then you also have this baggage of politicians who are just there because you are interested in satisfying their political constituency and also to get re-elected during their second tenure.
Okay, so I'm a presidential candidate, and while I was campaigning or preparing to campaign, for example, to contest, I have a team put together what you can call an economic, or what you call political manifesto, which I believe in. But then when I get elected, and I'll have to choose ministers based on political affiliations, what the political parties or the political godfathers and those who have helped me get into office. So I'm trying to separate the two here. Do you really have, or can you have, the men and women who were part of a political manifesto of a candidate, for example, become part of the cabinet that will run that vision for the new president? What is the reality within the Nigerian context?
So if you go back history, and especially since this nascent democratical, cycle started in 1999, so we'll go back to Obasanjo, so it's still the same thing. So Obasanjo was thinking about his re-election in 2003, even as he was appointing the key cabinet members in 1999. Some people will even say that Obasanjo didn't quite deliver much during his first tenure. But then we also know about the character of Obasanjo, his profile. Before Obasanjo became the president in 1999, he had been the head of state in about 20 years prior. So he's always been there. He's been the head of state. He's occupied a very senior position in Nigerian society, very internationally, highly recognized. And the fact that he was the military head of state and handed over to a civilian administration actually earned him very strong reputation across the globe. So he latched up onto that to somehow exert some sort of strength in appointing some people he think could help him to deliver. So you could get his government, if we, from the benefit of hindsight, was more of, technocrats. And then we could see the result of that in the years of his administration. But in contrast, right now, so we've seen President Bola Tinubu as a governor. Just as I said earlier, he had the leeway to appoint technocrats also who joined hands in helping him to build Lagos, as it is said. And of course, if you look at the track record of those individuals, because they've also gone ahead to leave their marks at the both global and national scene even after his tenure. It's on record. The past former vice president was a nominee coming from the current president. And so you have so many of his people who were key members of the last administration. So that tells you that he had that kind of capacity to do that then at the state level. But now coming to the center, you can see that it seems that his wings have been clipped, so he has not been able to exert such kind of influence as Obasanjo did when he was the president. So We now see that the people who helped him to draft that manifesto, which should actually be the agenda for his government, not many of them made it to his cabinet. So you now see other people who maybe they don't share the same philosophy, they don't share the same ideology of government and how to really make things work. But then he has to find a way to work with them. So, yeah, so there's a trade-off, as I said.
Okay, so which of the portfolios, Professor Adi, which of the portfolios should be the chief focus for the urgent economic renaissance that Nigeria urgently needs right now, and why?
You know, we have a hydra-headed problem in Nigeria right now. So we have reforms that don't seem to be taken off the way we had expected. If we go back to Kenya as well, so Kenya went out on the same footing as our president did on his inauguration, the removal of fuel subsidy. From the information reaching us today, if you follow the news, you see that the Kenyan government is reconsidering subsidy removal. So, in fact, they are about to rescind that decision, maybe to bring back subsidy. So that tells you how challenging the situation is. So, but Nigeria has even more problems than Kenya. Kenya doesn't have security challenges, and Kenya seems to have, again, very strong international reputation in the past couple of years. As you could see with the tech, investment seem to be heading in the direction of Kenya, and other investment as well. So many international organizations seem to overlook Nigeria in preference for Kenya. So they don't share the same problem as we have. So we have many problems here. So the business environment is badly challenged. So we need, a sort of a consort of highly, not just gifted or technical people, but we also have people who have that international branding, strong reputation, that are able to command, influence foreign, investment to the country.
Professor Adi,
so you're talking about the
Professor Adi, yes, I'm talking about the portfolios now. Which ministry or portfolios do you think should be that core team? You got the Ministry of Finance and for coordinating the economy put together. We're back to Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala kind of era, whatever. So give me a list. The challenge
that we have today is that of productivity. How do we get the Nigerian economy on a productive scale so that the economy can grow? So in that sense, we need to have the businesses, the industry. So if you ask me, the Minister for Trade and Investment, that should be the number one. And then we have to look at the environment of business, the infrastructure. So you're talking about transportation. I'm happy to know that the Water Resources Ministry, there's a change in nomenclature. So I see marine and blue economy. So that seems to be an addition to that. So which means they are beginning to think about that. So transportation and of course energy. So these are the core sectors that we need to prioritize right now. So the profile of the individuals managing these sectors also should matter, for the progress that we are looking for in the economy.
What about the Ministry of Finance and the minister who will be in charge of that and that of coordinating the economy? What do you make of that particular portfolio?
We have a challenge here. So in other climes, of course, everything is dependent on what the Constitution, the provisions of the Constitution. If you go to the United States, what we call the Ministry of Finance here is the United States Treasury Department, United States Department of Treasury. In the United Kingdom as well, it's also the Treasury, and then the corollary, to our finance minister is the Exchequer. So when you consider the job or the role that these people, the functions they play in the economy, then you will see why perhaps we need to reconsider some things here. The finance minister doesn't actually function as a treasury. Okay, there is a difference between treasury and financing. So when you talk about finance, you're looking at long term. When you talk about treasury, we're looking about short-term, management of funds and all of that. Here, in our own context, the CBN seem to have that role of being the regulator as well as the treasury. In other climes, you have the treasury that has some sort of an oversight over what the central bank does, especially when in respect to treasury. And because of this, so the central bank seem to have run away with a whole lot of powers. And then from what is from what we're seeing, it seems that that sort of constitutional provision gives the CBN too much power, and then gives it also that sort of moral hazard situation to abuse those powers. So we need to reconsider that. So the Ministry of Finance need to take on more responsibilities, rather than just being an advisor, to the government. Because we all could see also that the central bank took on the role of even the fiscal policy as well as monetary policy during the last dispensation. So these are some of the things that we need to address. And again, we now have finance and coordinating minister of the economy, which means we are going back to the Okonjo-Iweala days, the Goodluck Jonathan days. But what I can say to that is that that was a creation of circumstance, So coming from a reform background, the Jonathan administration, so he needed the people who championed the reforms that Obasanjo administration started. And I guess that's how people like Okonjo-Iweala, who was the Minister of Finance as well as the coordinating minister. So that's what gave justification to that role. But as it is today, I am trying to see, is there any justification for having something like a coordinating minister in the current dispensation? I think we need to really expand the role of the finance ministry, let them get to understand their role as the treasurer of the nation, and then function in that capacity. I think that will help a whole lot. But I don't see financing except in the abuse of the financial, policy. I don't see that as the major problem of the economy. The challenge of the economy is that of productivity. So, but unfortunately, we have left that, and everybody seems to have focused on financialization. But that is not just a Nigerian problem. I think it's a global problem, because if you also go back to the United States, they have this challenge that everything seems to have been reduced to finance. So you have an over-financialization of the economy. So that shouldn't be our problem, in Nigeria. So we need to focus on the key things that matter, which is how to grow productivity, how to increase our productivity as it is today. Okay. Until we do that, I don't think we could, grappling at, flaws, thinking that finance is our problem. Meanwhile, it's not.
So we need to increase productivity and very rapidly. But again, you need the ministers to perform. But that's why we come to the performance metrics. It was public knowledge under the Buhari's administration that the cabinet ministers or members were not really in sync or really working harmoniously. So what do you foresee for the newly announced cabinet under President Tinubu in terms of working together to get that much hard work done, which is staring everyone in the face?
Well, the technocrats will do their job. But then the politicians will also, the Minister of Work, we have, I don't want to name names, not at this stage until they have started, because they've just been announced. So, but I believe that some of the key members of the cabinet have what it takes to deliver, for the president, whatever be the ambitions of the president or his aspirations for the economy. But I don't think that his aspiration will be less than, putting this economy on the path of growth. He assured Nigerians that he will run an economy that will grow at a 6%, GDP 6% growth annually. So we are waiting to see that. So I think that's the metric that we'll be looking at. Would they be able to grow the economy to, to that level, given the people that we have on that cabinet? It's too early in the day. I don't want to say anything, but then, looking at some of the key members of the cabinet, you'll also see that some of them carry some sort of, even though they've been governors in the past, they have some sort of corruption baggage hanging over them. So that's something that we need to worry about, because today, I can assure you that we don't have the internal capacity to grow our economy. What we need to do is to set the conditions right to attract foreign direct investment. And then foreign direct investment, as you know, we'll be looking at the key people in the, because the signaling is everything. So if you have people who are not that clean, who are not perceived to be upright, by the rest of the world, that will actually influence which investment comes to the nation or not. So these are very important things that we have to be looking at. So in terms of metrics, for me, the GDP growth is everything. So 6%, yes, is acceptable growth. So we want to see what they are able to do. Will they work together? Well, it depends, again, on the person of the president. This is where leadership comes into play. As a governor, I think President Bola Tinubu did well. But as a president, we are waiting and watching to see what he can do.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Bongo Adi of the Lagos Business School. We thank you so much for your insights. Thank you so much. See you next time, and do have a very great evening.